Welcome back to Racing Rundown. On today's video, we are going to be previewing the Grade 1 Woodbine Mile up at Woodbine, obviously. And this is the only preview that we're going to have this week on Racing Rundown, partly due to a time situation, but also partly due to there just being a lack of races that warrant previews. There are some good races this weekend, but some of them are very one-dimensional. So this is the only race we're going to have a preview for this week, but we're going to get into this race like we do always, and we're going to start off with the number one horse. That's Mighty Heart, winner of 2 legs of Canada's Triple Crown in 2020, including the 2020 Queen's Plate. And Mighty Heart's a very interesting horse and very easy to root for. He's run a lot over the course of his career. Last time out, though, is really kind of the window into why I don't like him, and that was in the Niagara, or his run last time out was in the Niagara going 1.25 miles. Now, he is getting a little bit of a distance break here from that one, but the issue with Mighty Heart is Mighty Heart has never won on turf before. He hasn't tried it very many times. This is a horse who does most of his running on the all-weather at Woodbine, and here and there has come down south of the border and run in some dirt stakes. He has had some success. He won the Blame at Churchill Downs in 2021 and had a couple other stakes placings mixed in there. But this is a horse who's never run on turf. He lost the Breeders' Stakes when he was going for the Canadian Triple Crown in 2020. Then he also lost that Niagara Stakes. And not that this is the toughest field in the world, but for a horse who has never really looked like he's gotten over the surface, I don't really see an indication that's going to change in this race, and I personally wouldn't peg this as the race that would change in, even if this is a horse who eventually could get the turf. So for me, Mighty Heart, no thanks, because I think that the turf is going to be his biggest issue in this race. We'll move on now to the number 2 horse in this race, and that is Ivar. One of a few horses in this race that is very peculiar to look at. Now, Ivar is a Grade 1 winner and actually placed in Breeders' Cups twice. He was 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year, and then he was 4th in the 2020 Breeders' Cup Mile behind the Aidan O'Brien triumvirate in that race. And then he also won the Shadwell Turf Mile back in 2020. And he's coming out of a win at Indiana, or Horseshoe Indianapolis now. Still not used to the name change of that place. But that win last time out, good win, and the form has been backed up from it, with some like it Hot Brown having won at Kentucky Downs last time. And I think that that's certainly a big positive for Ivar, because as is well documented on Racing Rundown, I tend to like horses that have a start underneath them after a long break. So I'm much more inclined to like a horse second back off the layoff. And I'm going to get into it with a couple other horses in this race, but Ivar is one of 3 in here that are inconsistent, but at their best can win this race. And to call Ivar inconsistent, is really kind of disingenuous to him, because this is a horse who last year in the Keeneland Turf Mile was 4th, beaten very narrowly, and then in the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs, that was a blanket finish. He was 6th in that race, and he could not have been much more than a length and a half off of the win in that race, or off of winning that race. And I should correct myself, 2 lengths. But the point is that was a blanket finish toward the end of that race. So there's a lot of reasons to like Ivar in this race. I'm going elsewhere, but Ivar at his best can win this race. And the good thing about Ivar, if you do like him and if you're looking for a little bit of an exotic route here, is he has a start underneath him. So if you're someone like me who's concerned about a break, then Ivar certainly has that he has a start underneath him coming into this race in his corner. We're going to move on now to the number 3 horse in this race, the only filly, Wakanaka for Bill Mott. And this filly is a very honest runner. She has been keeping some very good form all year, running into Chad Brown a lot. And unusually here, she doesn't run into Chad Brown here. She does run into a couple other tough horses who we'll get to. But we'll look at her form. First start in the U.S., off the plane, off a bit of a break. I forgive her for that one. And then she placed in 3 straight races behind an Italian Grade 1 winner, Speak of the Devil, who looked really good in her Distaff Turf Mile victory, and then in Italian also there, and then Regal Glory. So 3 fillies that have shown talent, and then, 2 Grade 1 winners for Chad Brown. Got a bit of a class break last time in the Dance Smartly at Woodbine, going a little bit longer than this, but she's shown that a mile is no problem for her. And the thing about Wakanaka that I really like is her consistency. And I really like horses that have consistency. And when we get into the eventual place for this race, she's going to be mixed in to what I'm going to do in this race, because she does run good races. The problem is that she's been beaten by better horses in the past, and I think that that's something that can end up happening to her in this race, because I'm not 100% sure that I don't think that she's the best horse in this race. I think that there are a couple horses who can beat her, but I like her consistency. I think she's going to be a relatively reasonable price, and I think she's a good bet to hit the board in this race, because that's all she does when she has runs underneath her. We're going to move on now to the number 4 horse in this race, and that horse is Finest Sound, one of 2 horses coming into this race from Europe. Finest Sound is going to be ridden by Andrea Azzini in this race, and Finest Sound is a little bit interesting. This is a horse who has some good consistency this year. The problem is that, you have to judge how he's going to run against this level of competition. And, I'm not someone who is automatically going to go with a European horse over American horses. Obviously, if the horses look better, then yeah, I'll go that route. But just because Euro in a race against, average American horses, I'm not automatically going to go that route. And I kind of feel like Finest Sound fits into one of those European horses that, may take some wise guy money, because, they're trying to beat the lesser tier U.S. horses, because this is, a race that has some lesser tier horses in it. And that's really the way that I'm looking at Finest Sound. I'm not overly impressed by anything that he has done up to this point. A couple of group stakes placings, one at York and one at Goodwood, and those were a week apart from each other. And then you go back, Group 1 placed at Maidan back in March. Overall consistent, and there is certainly going to be some kind of, the mystery aspect of him. We don't know how well he's going to run in this race, so definitely could be one that if you're looking for a price, throw to hit the board. He does have some good consistency. He's not going to be for me in this race, ultimately, though. I think that there are better options for underneath uses in this race. We're going to move on now to the number 5 horse, the likely favorite for this race, and that's going to be Modern Games. And Modern Games, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winner last year, obviously involved in all the drama at the starting gate there. I'm not going to get into that, but subsequently, post-Breeders' Cup, Modern Games won the French Guineas, 3rd in the French Derby behind Vidani, and then 2nd last time out at Goodwood in the Sussex behind Baid. And Modern Games, I think, is a true standout in this race. I think, my personal theory is, Charlie Appleby had 3 Guineas winners this year. My personal theory is Modern Games was better than the late Caribus and also Native Trail. That's obviously something that we'll never get to prove, but just a personal theory that I have. And I think that this race is perfect for Modern Games, because, there are some good horses in here, but I think that Modern Games is as good a miler as you're going to find in this going towards the Breeders' Cup division, because I think that while there might be some better milers than him, I'm not sure that those European horses are eventual Breeders' Cup mile type horses. Obviously, he's not better than Baid. Baid is getting back up to 1.25 miles, going to stay at 1.25 miles, but Modern Games, for this kind of race, I think is as good a miler as you're going to find. And I think that this race is also going to set up very well for him, because he can sit relatively close. There are a couple horses that I think will be close to the pace in here. Those will be Get Smokin and Town Cruise. And, Modern Games can sit relatively close to them if they're going slower, on the slower side. But also, if there ends up being other horses that go up and challenge those, Modern Games can sit back off of them like he did in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And I think just in terms of whatever trip he sits in this race, I think that Modern Games is going to be in a perfect position to be able to win from that place. Obviously, he's Group 1 caliber when he won the French Guineas. His run behind Baid last time was really good. You're not going to beat Baid in any race, much less going a mile in that race in the Sussex. So, for the purposes of this race, there's not a better horse, I think, than you can get than Modern Games. I think that Modern Games is a clear standout in here, and it was not very difficult for me to settle on Modern Games in this race. And I know that that's a little bit boring to go with the favorite, but the favorite is the best horse in this race. We're going to move on now to the number 6 horse in this race, another another Grade 1 winner, and that's Shirl, who has been one of my best friends this year in terms of producing for Racing Rundown. Obviously, for a good portion of the year, 2 of my biggest hits were Shirl in his back-to-back races. But honestly, Shirl has been very weirdly campaigned this year. So we had the 2 stakes wins to begin the year once he finally got back on the turf, and the allowance race before that. Then he ran in the Turf Classic on that bum turf course at Churchill Downs. Didn't run well there, but I can generally look past poor efforts over that turf course because of the condition that it's been in. Salvatore Mile was very annoying that he ran there. That was on dirt, so I don't care about that race. But then last time out in the Connaught Cup, he just didn't really look too good. And he was beaten quite a bit at the end of the day in that race. And I wonder if Shirl Speight's best races are behind him for this year. Now, at his best, Shirl Speight can win this race. And Shirl Speight is definitely a turf horse. And, maybe he needed one start on the turf after running on the dirt to get back into the swing of things. I don't know. He's never really been a horse that's like that, but, it's certainly possible with Shirl Speight. He does like that this is his most preferred surface turf, so, you're getting a Grade 1 winner who is maligned off of a couple of efforts, but at his best can certainly produce a winning effort in this race. So I don't think it's crazy to go to Shirl Speight here, but Shirl Speight is just not in good form right now, and as at post-Turf Classic, I just think that, Shirl Speight is best to let him beat you in a start before you go back to him. I don't have the angle to see him running good in this race that I did going back to Tampa, because he did have the turf win in the allowance at Tampa. The best that I could find is maybe he needed a reset race, one start on the turf after going back to the dirt to reset himself, and maybe he'll be better in this race, but I'm not willing to bank on that in this spot, so I'm going to go elsewhere in this spot. We're going to move on now to the number 7 horse, and that is Homer Screen for Neil Drysdale, a very interesting horse in this race. And Homer Screen is another one that I think you can make a case for underneath. I'm personally not going to, but I'll make that case for you, or give you reasons why you could make that case. So this is a horse who Neil Drysdale, very famous for bringing horses up from South America and campaigning them in the United States. He's turned many into stakes winners before. Point is this has been done before. And Homer Screen has been keeping some good form as of late. He ran 4th in the Daytona, which was his first start off of a 10-month layoff. He ran behind multiple graded stakes winner Bran in that race. Bran, obviously stakes winner in the Daytona, subsequently came back and won the turf sprint at Kentucky Downs. Next time out at Santa Anita, ran 2nd behind Hong Kong Harry in the American Stakes, who is at the moment the best miler on the West Coast, which is kind of an oxymoron to say that, but he did do that. And then he was 4th, beaten a nose for 3rd by Cathkin Peak in the Eddie Reed Stakes, going 1 1/8 miles. So this is clearly a horse who has some consistency. He's going to be some kind of a price in here. I'm not sure exactly what the price is because I'm doing this race before I have the morning line, but I would not imagine he's going to take a great amount of playing in this race. So certainly one to look at. His 3 starts that I would consider relevant. You go back to the Wicker last year. That was off of a 6-month layoff, first time off the plane. But his 3 starts this year, very good. A start off of a significant layoff, 2nd behind a future graded stakes winner, and then very narrowly held out of the top 3 in the Eddie Reed Stakes. Just lost a nose bob there for 3rd. So you can certainly make that case for Homer Screen. As I said, I like Wakanaka, and then there's a long shot that I'll get to, but you can certainly make that case for Homer Screen if you want to in this race. We're going to move on now to the number 8 horse in this race, and that is Get Smokin. Get Smokin's one of the real important horses for me in this race, but that's from a pace perspective and not anything else. Get Smokin was Eric's pick last time in the 4-star Dave, and it was a logical pick because he was going to be Lone Speed in that race, and Lone Speed with him lasted about as long as it could. This is a horse who's been honest throughout portions of his career. I really liked him going into the middle part of 2021. I thought that he could be a potential graded stakes winner. Never did quite reach that level. He was second behind Shirl Speight in the Tampa Bay Stakes earlier on this year. Went over to Maidan, ran in the Alquaz. That didn't go well. It was never going to go well. And then he was second in the Arlington off a 2.5 month break in that race. And then subsequently fourth in the Forbidden Apple, a race which once again very, very narrow finish toward the end, so hit the board there, and then fourth in the 4-Star Dave behind multiple Grade 1 winner Casa Creed, multiple Grade 1 winner Regal Glory, and Mason. So, keeping good form, but the problem is that when he's beat rather significantly, and I think he's going to be, I don't want to say a pace casualty, but I don't think he's going to win this race, because I think he's going to be forwardly placed early on here, and I think that that's going to put your horses like Modern Games in the best position to come get them late. And that's what happened last time in the 4-Star Dave, and I would expect that to happen again in this race, especially because he'll have company up front, which we will get to in just a few moments. We'll move on now to the number 9 horse in this race, and that is War Bomber. Won the Seagram Cup in his last start before this race, and then subsequently before that was third in an allowance race, which was his second start of the year. First start was the Dominion Day Stakes, fifth in that race, but that was off of a pretty sizable break. You go back through the form lines for this horse. He did win the Toronto Cup Stakes last fall at Woodbine. But overall, this is a horse who has some good form in some cases, but he leaves a lot to be desired in terms of when you look at this type of a race, a mile against a Grade 1 against quality milers on their best days. And ultimately, I think that he's a long shot that I got to look past in this race. You could, if you're going super crazy in this race, maybe you could look to him. But I think that there are ultimately better horses to go with if you're going to take that angle than him. So he's going to be one that I'm going to be passing on in this race. We're going to move on now to number 10, the defending champion of this race, Town Cruise. And I got to give props to Eric for this one. Eric had Town Cruise last year in last year's Woodbine Mile. And Town Cruise ran the race of his life in that Woodbine Mile. But I would also say that Town Cruise very much tripped out in that race. The reason that Eric picked him was because he was going to be lone speed. That's exactly what happened. He was lone speed. He drew away, won the race by just over 2 lengths, ridden by Daisuke Fukumoto that day, who will be riding him also in this race. And with the presence of Get Smokin', I just don't think Town Cruise is going to trip out in this race. And at his best, he can win this race. However, the big thing is presence of Get Smokin' means that he's not going to be lone speed. And if you go back to last time out in the King Edward, there was Filo de Ariana up there with him early on in that race, and that really compromised him, at least from my judgment. In that race, you go back to subsequent starts, more of the same with him. So if for some reason he ends up being lone speed in this race again, or the way you're drawing this race up, he is going to be lone speed, then sure, go for it. But I just don't think this is a horse who can succeed when he doesn't mighty trip out, and he mighty tripped out last year, and I think even Eric would admit, but ultimately that's why Eric picked him in that race, but mighty tripped out last year in the Woodbine Mile, and I just don't think he's going to trip out to that same degree this time, and ultimately for that reason I'm not going to be going with Town Cruise in this race. We're going to move on to the number 20 horse in this race, and that is March to the Arch, a veteran, 33 starts for this guy. And this is the other horse that I've been alluding to this entire time that I think can hit the board. March to the Arch, horse who as I said, has been around for a very long time. And he doesn't have a wide variety of in the money finishes. 8 wins, 5 seconds, and 4 thirds. So for a horse with 33 starts, 17 times in the money, pretty good percentages. But not anything that's like, okay, that's the most consistent. But you can go down a couple additional 4th place finishes before. So again, this is a horse that has been consistent throughout the majority of his career, and I think that this is the kind of horse you want to look at if you're going to try to make some kind of money in this race, because you do see all over the place the good back efforts in the form lines for him. A good chunk of seconds and thirds. He was 4th last time in the King Edward, and unfortunately you don't get paid for 4ths, but I can make that case because there's plenty of 4ths with him. But he was 2nd in the Connaught Cup. That was in July, and then you go back to last year, third in the King Edward, second in the Dominion Day, and he did win the Niagara in between those two efforts. So March to the Arch is a horse that I think that you can make a good case for to run an in-the-money type effort in here, and I think he's going to be a fair price in this race. I'm willing to take that chance with him to try to see if he can be the horse to hit the board at a good price for me in this race. And that gets to my picks for this race. So as I alluded to, Modern Games is going to be my pick in this race. I just don't see a reason why Modern Games is not going to win this race. I think he's the standout here. I think he's the standout right now in this division. Obviously, we'll see what comes over from Europe, but at the moment, I think that Modern Games is a clear standout. And then my two underneath plays in this race are going to be Wakanaka and March to the Arch here. I'm not putting together a triple in this race. I'm just going to say Modern Games is my win pick. Those are the two horses I'm going to give you out. Wakanaka, a bit of a shorter price. March to the Arch, probably a bit of a longer price. Again, I'm doing this race before I have the morning line, so I don't really know how to forecast that, but I would imagine Wakanaka is going to take a little bit more money than March to the Arch would. Modern Games on top for me. We'll see you today on Racing Rundown episode 176. Be sure to check that out. We're going to be recording this, talking about the other stakes at Woodbine, as well as everything stateside at Aqueduct and Churchill Downs. So we will see you for that. Have a good one, and if you're playing this race, good luck to you.